Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Daily Leader, where we are going to seek to stay curious about leadership and help foster in-depth discussions on leadership. So we're super excited today to get going. I am one of your co-hosts, Taylor Jessup, along with Brad McDonald, and we have got a fantastic guest today that I'm going to let Brad introduce in just a moment. Before we get too much further into that, we do like to give our shout outs at the beginning of each episode. So, hey, special thanks to Jesus with Video Pilot, who can take care of all of your podcasting needs there in terms of editing, recording, all those good things. Check him out at Video Pilot there. Please see the show notes. Same with April Norris, who has wonderfully put together the intro music that you just heard and we'll hear at the end of our podcast. She also has her whole line of music there on both Spotify and Apple Music or wherever you get your music. Special shout out and our toast, Brad. If you've got a little mug here, we always give a toast to the department, which I am not at currently. Thank you, department. We do a lot of podcasting there and recording for all of your podcasting needs. And one last shout out to Ellery May, who has a super hot babe of an organizer there who runs that company. She's my wife. I'm a little bit biased, but you can see the candles are back here. I like to say, light a small fire in your house that smells like heaven. She will not let me use that line ever for her actual business, but that's what I like to say. So if you need any candles, check her out. She'll be in our show notes as well. And lastly, and he doesn't know I'm going to say this, but hey, happy anniversary to my partner in crime, Mr. Brad McDonald. How many years have you now been married, sir?
9 years of marriage.
9 years that
And
Becca has somehow put up with you. Is that correct? That
indeed,
is, man,
indeed.
that is fantastic. Well, good for the two of you. That is exceptional. You have two beautiful children that are fantastic, and just wanted to say congratulations. So, I've talked plenty. That is enough of an intro there. I'm sure everybody wants me to be quiet. Brad, could you kindly introduce Will today?
I sure can. Will, super, super grateful that you would take the time to be with us today on the Daily Leader. Will Severns is a new friend of mine. Will and I got in contact through a mutual friend because Will co founded Streamline Books. And book writing is something that I am beginning the process of planning for over the course of the next year with a business partner of mine named Mitch Aldridge, who oversees all of the content and insights with Pattern Talent. And so we reached out to Will and basically said, "Hey, what would it look like for us to write a book? And what's the process? What's the cost?" And so he's been walking us through and has served as a guide with us as we begin to plan that out. And so, Will, we're super grateful to have you here and would love just to hear your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, where you're at in your life, the work that you're doing as you've co-founded and founded multiple business projects. We're just eager to get to know you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad. Man, congratulations. I didn't know that about the anniversary. That is super exciting. Lauren and I, my wife, we celebrate 8 years on January 30th. So, gotta love a good winter wedding. And yeah, man, I agree with Taylor. That is no small deal. So, congratulations. And Taylor, I don't know if I'd say you missed your calling because you're behind the mic right now. I just think you're
Sure.
born to do it, man. You were born to be in this seat. I don't know if it was SportsCenter or ESPN, their loss, because we have you here now, and it's just fun to see you, man, in this role of playing host. You and Brad, grateful to be here, guys. And I think my story, a large part of it centers around. I was born and raised here in the Kansas City metro area, so Prairie Village, Kansas. So I was born and raised on the Kansas side. Some people get that mixed up. Is it Missouri or Kansas? And so I was born and raised on the Kansas side, but obviously grew up a big Royals, Chiefs fan, and so forth. And then for me, a lot of my story also revolves around Taylor in the sense of I went to a small school in Indiana called Taylor University. And so that's a big part of my story. My three older siblings went there in Indiana. And then coincidentally, all the four of us eventually moved back. So in Kansas City currently with my wife and I, we have two kiddos. And then Taylor continues as a theme as our new neighbor here. I might have heard of her. Taylor Swift just moved in the Kansas City metro as well. So
she did. She did. That's
yeah,
amazing.
totally. We just went to the park with her the other day. Might go to hit up Trader Joe's this weekend just for a fun little get together. And yeah, so and then now sitting here with you, Taylor and Brad. So yeah, guys, that's part of my story is Taylor. Uh, when I went to Taylor University, kind of got me started on this entrepreneurial journey, which is ever, it's still going. It's an ever present deal, and kind of theme of my life is what it means to create and to take an idea that God puts in your brain and take the next steps to make it a reality. I just think is one of the most fun, exciting things, and I know will be um, discussed in this conversation, because whether it's my past ventures or what you guys are on right now, it's just so fun to create and to utilize one's gifting and skill set. So thank you guys again for having me, because I can't wait to dive into some of these topics.
Absolutely. We're excited. So let's kind of start with Streamline Books, because that's how I got to know you, obviously through Bill High and Drew, and would love just to hear about your journey co-founding Streamline. So let's kind of start there, and then tell us about some of those other ventures that you started too. And we'll just move into talking about what leadership looks like for you in this season of your life. Maybe that's as a father, maybe that's as a co-founder and a founder, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, totally. So Streamline Books is the company that I co-founded with my friend and business partner. His name is Alex Dimchek. And Alex and I, we were co-counselors together at a Christian summer camp based out of Branson, Missouri called Kanakuk Camps. And so again, yeah, I'm sure there's maybe some mutual overlap there. Brad, you're laughing. Did we talk about that, or
Just summer camp is a very big part of my upbringing in my life, and so summer camp is just a funny thing. It's like Jerry Seinfeld talking about Pop Tarts. It's like
yeah.
summer camp's just funny. It just even sounds funny.
Yeah, it is, formative years for me as a camper, but then eventually when I worked there, my summers in college, you ask yourself those questions of like, man, what am I doing here? With these, teenagers in my summers in college, should I be at an internship or what have you? But it was such a blast, man, those summers, and getting to meet guys like Alex, who I'd say after those years at camp together, which is probably 2012 through 2014, life just kind of took us separate ways. Years later, we reconnected in 2020. And by that point, I had my own content marketing company called Quill Creative that I had started here in Kansas City. And I'd been doing Quill for about 2 to 3 years. Around that time in 2020 summer, I'd gotten into ghostwriting, specifically alongside business leaders and owners in the Kansas City area, whether that was blog posts or LinkedIn articles I'd helped business owners with. Well, around that time, Alex had his own public speaking business, which continues to this day. And when we reconnected, Alex was going, Will, people ask me all the time, how do I get into more speaking or grow my business or get my message out there? And Alex would tell them after these speaking engagements, he would say, well, a book helps. And people would turn around and say, that's great. Well, how do I do that? And Alex never really had an answer for them. And so he and I just kind of started dreaming, what would this look like in terms of our gifting and skill set, kind of with me on the writing and editing side, on the forefront, and then on the back end with Alex, kind of the post production. People going, I've got this book, now what? How do I utilize it to grow my message and do these different things? So we tried it, and we did it with one of our friends. It was a mutual friend of Alex's named Colin Holba. He was a NFL long snapper for about 4 or 5 years, and Colin was getting ready to retire. He'd had this idea for a book, and we said, we'd love to help you. So we helped Colin write, edit, and publish his book in July of 21. So that was kind of author number one for us. And literally yesterday morning, which is fun to think about, we signed our 97th author.
Wow.
That's
Congratulations.
Yeah, we will be able to work with over the last 2 to 3 years. And man, it's been so much fun and a grind. You could even to say that number, 97, it's like, oh, great. And yeah, thank you for the congrats. But we know, guys, that is a drop in the bucket, compared to how many people are out there that have, this dream and this idea of taking their expertise and their story and blending it together, getting it down on paper. Yeah, it's so fun. And I could talk about it for a while. I'm passionate about what we do and how we get to help and serve others. Yeah, there's a whole ton, from a leadership standpoint that I've that I've learned and grown from in the last couple years. Namely, I think in what it means to move from working in the business, which is where it started with Alex and I, where again it was me writing and editing a lot of those books alongside authors, kind of making that transition from going in the business to on the business, right?
That's good.
Was kind of 2022 to 2023 for us. So 2023 now in retrospect and just looking at what the last 12 months have had to show us about leadership and namely leading others who are better than us, on the writing and editing and project management sides of things. That's just a different transition, right? When it's not just Alex and I, we have people beneath us now who we are leading in the process. So yeah, this podcast comes at a good time because I'm totally in a state of reflection. What went well, some went well, and then what is there to improve upon? A lot. And so it's a huge theme. The last thing I'll say, just this leadership journey, you've never arrived, right? And I think the moment you say that about yourself, man, I've done it, I'm a leader now, is probably the moment that you need to check yourself, because that's not it. It's an everyday thing, I think, until probably the day we die, of just continuing to learn and get better each day.
That's so good. One of the big questions I have for you, Will, because of a little bit of this diversity of experience you've had, is what's the difference between founding solo and then co-founding a business, and how have those experiences been different for you, and what have you learned from both of them?
Yeah, totally. So briefly, if someone were to go to LinkedIn, or I would to talk about my past history in relation to entrepreneurship, I don't really consider myself like a serial entrepreneur, right? I haven't, started dozens and sold a few companies over the course of my career. I know I'm still early on in what it means to found and run a successful company. And after I graduated from Taylor's, when I founded my first, there's a product line called MemBands. So MEM bands, like memory bands, is a mnemonic device aiding others in scripture memory, and or business messages or mantras you can put on a silicone wristband for the sake of memorizing it, kind of storing that word internally. We've helped, for-profits, nonprofits, whether it's their core values or a vision statement, in addition to, scripture memory, which is where I founded the idea on. So I started MemBands after I graduated from Taylor, which was fun. It was a roller coaster and has continued to this day. MemBands still exists. You can go to membands.com and check out the product for yourself. But yeah, that kind of solo venture it's a lot to take on your own. Yes, in terms of the X's and O's and the blocking and tackling of actually getting the thing up and running and purchasing your own legal entity and all of that. But I think more than anything, mentally, right? Of just saying, man, I've decided to undertake what I feel like I'm called to, but that brings on a whole host of, and because you see it, call it imposter syndrome, call it, criticism that you might sense or feel from even close friends or family members, which can be some of the toughest part, right? Is you're trying to follow your dream and your passion, and you have people who care about you going, that's great, Will, but wouldn't just a normal 9 to 5 be kind of the safer? And that's the thing, where you don't blame anyone for wanting to guide you in those ways, but is this constant push and pull of, I want to heed wisdom and advice from the people who truly care about me, while at the same time pursuing what I really feel called to do. That tension, I would say, has probably followed me for the past 10 years of my life. And then I would say, after I moved back to Kansas City with my wife in 2018, I landed at a marketing firm in town. So for me, it kind of was that moment of like, you know what? I tried MemBands, and it just might need to take a back seat for a little bit while I enter into some sort of stability. My wife and I had our first child at the time, so I landed a job at a marketing firm. I was there for a whopping 8 to 9 months before I got the axe, called into my boss's office, and was let go April of 2019. So again, another reflective season coming up, as it'll be 5 years in April from the time I was let go. And I would say in that moment, Brad and Taylor, of when you're called into your boss's office and you know what's coming, and you'd kind of seen some signs in the months leading up, and he confirms, hey, Will, this just isn't a great fit. I just had a huge peace that day. and an understanding of, hey, this work is not me. It's not who I am. It doesn't define me, enough to, shake my employer's hand and thank him for the experience. And I walked out of there, head held high. I didn't know what was next, but I will tell you guys that I felt free for the first time in a while, where I just kind of felt chained to a desk of just, I don't know if this is me. I don't know if this is a right fit. I met up with my brother that night, and my wife, coincidentally, she was out of town. She was visiting her family in Indianapolis. So Drew said, Willie, come on over. He goes, I'll throw on some celebration steaks. And so he did. He fired up the grill, and we just sat on his back patio that night. And man, to think about where we were 5 years, that was before some of his stuff, before he'd thrown his name into the hat for Chick-fil-A owner operatorship, which we've talked about before, and just kind of cheers to what was next. And since then, man, it was off and running. And my journey with starting Quill Creative, my content marketing company I founded, is the result of me getting fired. The day after I was let go, I sent out an email to about 30 to 40 individuals in my network and kind of sphere of influence, and just said, hey, here's where I'm at. Would appreciate your prayers, and keep an ear out. And that email led to my first probably 3 or 4 marketing clients on the side. They said, Will, we actually need some marketing help. And I just said, hey, cool. A few of these, kind of freelance clients turned into what Lauren and I founded. Our limited partnership is Quill Creative. Quill exists to this day. But I would say where what began as kind of the solopreneurship venture with Quill eventually led into this specific offering in book form, which is a little of what I shared earlier. That's when Alex and I reconnected a couple years after the fact and started down this road of Streamline together.
Man, what a powerful story, right? I mean, that man, for you to go and to have enough health to not take that personally, but to feel freedom. And then not only to feel freedom, but to turn that freedom into an incredible adventure that you have been on ever since is fantastic. And I hope that there may be a bunch of our listeners going, oh, maybe I just need to be done at my particular job and follow whatever's actually on my heart or my passion, man.
Go get fired.
Yeah, right. Go get, not that we'd ever tell somebody, hey, go get fired. But it is fascinating how sometimes those can be real pivot points in our story, right? And that seems like that's a fantastic pivot point that actually propelled you to where you are now, which you seem to be much freer, enjoying it, just in a really just healthy, exciting place. So I'm so grateful for you sharing that. I think myself, like I learned so much just from that story in it of, man, like, okay, what's really going on in here? Why am I doing? What am I doing? Where do we go next? Which kind of brings me to my next question, which I want to drill down a little bit more on Streamline. One of the things I love to talk to with the leaders that we bring on the show is kind of like, help me understand the why, right? So why help leaders write books? What is your why in that?
Yeah, great question. And obviously, that is a huge question of the day for any business or organization. When it all comes down to it, you have to focus on the core, why we're doing what we're doing. And for Alex and I, over the last year, we've just experienced a lot of clarity in our why, which if someone were to ask us, we would say our why at Streamline Books is reframing author success. And that notion is really, it points to something we've found and experienced in this industry of publishing, right? The more companies we found over the last 2 to 3 years, we noticed there's a lot of, hey, write a bestseller, we will help you write a bestseller or some form or fashion. Once you write this book, man, the doors that are going to open. And we know.
Can you do that for the Daily Leader, please? Can you write us a bestseller, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, well, I think what's so exciting and what we get to tell and coach authors is that something better is going to happen than a bestseller for you in the aftermath of writing this book. The reality is that sitting here today, we just can't tell you what that is, and it's all rooted in this notion of one of the best things we can do for our prospective authors on the back end of their journey is set realistic expectations for them on the front end. And so that idea kind of paired with this idea or understanding of, look, we've all been to the same conferences, and listened to people up on stage. A lot of times it's the same people every time, and
Hmm.
a lot of these
Hmm.
authors, they're going, well, I'm not a Bob Goff or a Brene Brown or a John Acuff. And we're saying, you don't have to be, you're Brad McDonald. And uh, the book that you were born to write, it's like, it's still out there, man. It's still waiting to be
Mm.
written. And we get to help tease that out of individuals and instill into them the truth and the importance. I mean, those conferences, think about how much wisdom is sitting in the crowd and those thousands of seats. Because it's not just Brad or it's not just Taylor. Think about the people you guys know who it's like, where's their book?
Hmm.
And I've been really intrigued over the last year or two, not to go too side tangent, but these 20 under 20 and 30 under 30, and these 40 under 40 lists. It's like I made a post on LinkedIn a few months ago that was interesting and caught some traction. It was my dad's 70th birthday, and I was like, we need more 70 under 70 lists, from people who have been there and who have done it. And it's why I really am honored that you guys would invite me onto this, because there's still so much I'm learning, and I need to learn. And so with our why, I think people really resonate with that, because I think they can see through a lot of kind of the bull crap elsewhere, like
Yeah.
promising the moon. That's not what we're
Sure.
after.
Sure.
And so much of our offering through Streamline, which I know I haven't gotten into too much, we essentially have two core options. Our option one is if the author leads the way writing, and we kind of trail you. We provide you with a developmental editor and a team. You have your project manager, your copy editor, and so forth, interior layout, cover design. We do it all. Kind of this terminology of turnkey publishing is kind of what we're on as of late. And then our option two is kind of our ghostwriting option. So that's, for the individual going, guys, it's all up here. What I don't have is the time or skill set to sit in front of my computer and hammer this thing out. We say, that's great.
Mm.
We pair you with a professional writer, and through a series of 5, 60, and 90-minute interviews, podcast style almost, we get to work through your outline that we help you define as well. And in the end, create your manuscript that you have full overview, full insight, and get to add, hey, this paragraph looks great. Let's tweak this one differently. It's so fun for our authors, the way that we get to help you kind of bring your words into fruition. Well, in and through those offerings, I mentioned this earlier, there's just coaching throughout. People are going, is this a good book that we're writing? It's like, yeah, it's a good, I hope so. I hope that it would be with what we're offering. But again, it just goes back to the mental side of pursuing any endeavor, whether it's your own business or whether it's your own book. That is a constant day-to-day battle of, what am I doing here? And once you
Hmm.
realize that nobody knows what they're doing, it
Yep.
makes it a lot easier, because you just get to say, look, one day at a time. Um, yeah, that's where it's at, is just that slow, one day at a time. Can I get to the next day? Can I get to the next day? Do I have enough for today? And if you have enough for today, then yeah, keep going. It's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good enough. Man, there was so much good stuff that you just packed in there, right? I mean, when you said the line, I loved it, reframing authors' success. It was kind of almost the shiver down my spine moment for me, because I love that idea of taking, we look at a Bob Goff or a Brene Brown and we go, well, that's what success looks like. And it's like, well, that's not true. That is a type of success, and they have been very successful. But I think that idea of helping all those that you're working with reframe what that idea looks like is incredible, because that success is different for potentially each of us, right? In so many different facets. And I love that you're honest with them. Like, I love that you're not just, I think one of the key points that Brad and I've talked about in leadership that we're learning is not to fill people with crazy ideas, but to give them honest and realistic. Like, you're not selling them a guarantee of anything. And that's the adventure. That's in my own life. That's what I've been trying to learn a little bit. It sounds like you are on that, of like daily just getting up in the event. We don't know where we're going to end up, right? And that's what's kind of exciting and scary about it. So if you have just enough for the day. So man, that was some good, just good nuggets in there, man. I hope our listeners are really paying attention. Talk to me a little bit more about kind of like, how does being an author and a leader? Like, you've done this a bunch, so I'm just trying to weave it together for our audience here, right? So how does being an author and a leader intersect? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question and great Tommy Boy reference.
Yeah, if you're a
That
Tommy
made me,
Boy fan, man, this is a good group right here.
yeah. I mean, you want a good nugget, Chris Farley, and I was like, oh, Tommy Boy, or this line might be Black Sheep when he goes, and he's up on the basketball goal, and he goes, "Man, don't I feel like a horse's patoot?"
Yeah, that's right.
That honestly is how I feel most days. You drop the ball
Yeah.
over and over and over again, thousands of times. But man, it's those couple wins mixed in that just are enough.
Mm,
It's like golfing. You go out a day on the links for any of us
yep.
average. Man, those one or two shots will keep you coming back for more. But
Yeah, that's
uh,
105 bad ones to two good, but I'm going to be there and pay $150 next week. So let's go.
yeah, no,
That's awesome.
totally. So, well, we love the line of the root word of authority is author. And I remember the
Mm,
first time someone told me that, it was like, oh man, it's like it was right in front of us the whole time. And I think that notion is interesting. You hear the line of, oh yeah, so and so wrote the book on fill in the blank. And that's a very empowering thing, right? Paired with the reality of, look, a book makes your message portable. And
mm,
so many of the leaders and prospective authors we work with, they're going, guys, I do speaking or I do coaching or I do these different things. I don't have time to sit down and grab coffee for an hour with every person who I'm sure like wants some of my time. Like it's a very flattering thing, right? When someone comes up to you, hey, can we meet up? I just need some of your time. And when you can shoot them over a link and say, look, here's my book. I've taken the time, these different
yep.
elements where, or I mean, I guess to maybe zoom out a little bit and you think about authors that maybe you admire in the past, or for me personally, one that maybe you guys are familiar with is Tim Keller, the
Mhm.
late Tim Keller, who passed away in 2023. And I think something that maybe has lessened the blow of his death and his voice in our generation is the fact that like we have a lot of his content, and it's not just content, it's just, I mean, how do you begin to describe the years of wisdom and how that guy could take these lofty ideas and make them into readable, digestible principles for all of us? It's like we
Mm,
have that now. And I remember after Keller died, I listened to, they did one of his kind of like a tribute on his podcast about one of the last interviews that he did. Someone asked Tim Keller about legacy. They said, what do you think about legacy? And, kind of the legacy you might. And Tim responded, he goes, I don't really think about legacy too often in regard to beyond his death. He goes, but one thing I do think about, he goes, I hope that my grandkids remember me,
mhm,
and just that line, it's like
mhm.
unbelievable. I hope my grandkids remember me, who I am, times that we had together, words that I would have shared with him. That's Tim Keller of all people.
Yeah.
And so I think that just that, again, that's just zooming it out to say your, or we were on with another perspective author the other day who he's actually based out of Atlanta. He's an awesome guy. And he goes, um, he dropped this line, a Tim Elmore line, and he said, "More time spent with less people is kingdom impact, or
Hmm.
is real impact." And I think that speaks to this authorship journey where you are taking an extended period of time to get the ideas and principles that mean most to you down on paper.
Mhm.
That is quite contrary to this day and age, because you guys know it, you get it. It's like content, quick hitting, TikTok, YouTube shorts. It's like, I know it's all out there, but to take the time to actually say, no, I'm going to sift through the sand of all the things I could talk about,
Mm,
identify the core things that are most important to me in my life, and I'm going to really do a deep dive into why that's
mm,
important to me, because what's important to me I think could impact an amount of people. And even if it's not thousands, what if it's just for this few? Was it worth it? I would hope so.
mm.
I don't know if that answers.
Yeah. No, Man, that's fantastic. I mean, it sounds, to me, just to kind of recap, I think what you're saying is, I mean, there's a couple things that happen in the leadership sphere when you become an author, right? A is, it sounds like your influence has the ability to grow exponentially, right? Because our time is limited to be able to meet with people, and realistically, if we have three or four people that we influence really well in life, I think we've done a good job. But if everybody can hear kind of your story, like we all have a story to tell, right? And I think more people need to hear more people's story. And it sounds, like being an author is a fantastic way to do that. And not only that, you're leaving behind something for people to learn from generation to generation or longer, right? Like even Tim Keller saying, "Hey, I hope my grandkids." Well, when his grandkids get stuck, they can always go back and read some of his material, listen to some, whatever that is. So, no, I think that's perfect. It sounds like it's an incredible platform for leaders, to be able to kind of increase that sphere of influence without taking away of the personal touch of being with people, like actually being with people, which I think post COVID, right? We've all realized is such an important thing. We can do this, I'd much rather do this in Kansas City over some barbecue, doing all those kind of things in person, just because like I think that has a greater impact. So I think that was fantastic, which I'm going to go to our most broad question, but we ask everybody that comes on the show. So it kind of puts everybody in an interesting rock and a hard place, but I'm going to go real broad. So we're going to take couple steps back. What is leadership? Like, how do you define leadership in your own life? And as you see it in your company and in your personal life, like what is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right in that it's broad, but it's good to ask yourself or converse over the idea of leadership. Uh, Periodically, because you forget. It's like, I guess, beginning with me in first grade. I think of this story that my mom likes to tell. Parent teacher conference, me, my mom, and my first grade teacher. And I remember walking. Um, I have a faint memory, but my mom, she remembers it clear as day, and she'll share with others that in the car ride home from that parent teacher conference with my mother, I apparently dropped the line to my mom. I said, "Mom, I'm so tired of hearing the L word." And what I meant by that, and she'll tell the story of, it was kind of a theme in the early years of elementary, is these teachers would talk about, Will is a leader,
Hmm.
and then go on to say, but you can use that kind of for better or worse. And sometimes he'll stand up on a desk and class clown type stuff. Uh, great. Um, I don't want to botch Uncle Ben's line, but great power, great responsibility, type stuff is bound, I think, in the leadership ethos, right?
Yep.
And that's not to say that everyone else in my elementary school isn't a leader. It's like we all have leadership capabilities in us,
Hmm.
right? I think, again, asking these questions for whoever's listening or whoever we might encounter, every person has leadership in them. It's how you steward it and how you wield it with wherever you are. You think the map at the mall,
Absolutely.
you are here. Wherever you are, how are you channeling, the leadership role that you have been called to? I think a definition of leadership, yeah, that's a tough one. My angle, if you don't mind, kind of, on the curveball, just to choke up on the bat and maybe just a single up the middle here, is bound, I think, in a definition of humility that stuck with me and I heard in college, that is a pretty big driving force for me in my day to day. And I'd be curious your guys' thoughts on it. But it was spoken, a professor at Wheaton College, his name's Jerry Root. He came over and gave a lecture series at Taylor when I was a student there. And he dropped this line that I thought was just a great word picture. And he goes, and it doesn't have the word leadership in it, but it's about humility, and I think speaks to leadership. And he says, pride walks into the room and says, "Here I am." Humility walks into the room and says, "There you are." And I think that line to me embodies a definition of leadership that I hope encapsulates my life. And any room I walk into, and we've all been around those individuals, right? We've all been around the people who they walk into the room and it's like, all right, I'm here, let the party begin. And
Yeah.
which person would you rather spend time or the evening with? The person who, hey guys, the party's arrived, or the person who walks in the door and says, there you are. So I don't know what you might take or extrapolate out
That's
of
good.
that.
Oh man,
But I think
that's
that
good.
I hope embodies my own leadership journey in life and business.
No,
And
that's so good, man. And I don't know if it makes, you threw a great curveball, and if you can knock it out of the park. I think those are the reverse teams of the way that's supposed to work, but you knocked it. It's a fantastic answer, man. Like making like those that make it about other people, right? And making them the hero, to steal from kind of like story brand. I think that those are the leaders that are A, so attractive, and B, that's replicable. Like you keep doing that because people gravitate towards those people, right? So I love the flex into the idea of humility and going, yeah, a great leader or leadership is defined like, hey, can you be about those other people and not necessarily about me, about what I'm doing, about my agenda, even in a company of going, okay, cool. It may be my company, but can I make all of my employees the hero, right? It may be my team. I may be the coach, but can I make the players the hero in the story? Those people are, man, they're attractive, right? You want to be around them. You want to learn from them because they got enough confidence in themselves to just keep going and keep letting it be about other people, and don't need the win to be, hey, I'm super awesome, right? Like, so anyways, that was a great flex, Brad. Quick pivot, as we like to do and as leaders often do. I think we got a little rapid fire session. We
That's on the agenda, gentlemen. That's correct. So
yeah, maybe a little
we'll
rapid fire.
we do our best to include this where we can in our interviews. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a rock and a hard place. We're going to try to hang you between the horns of a dilemma, a leadership dilemma. And the big idea here is that you're going to want both of the options, but you just get to pick one. And so it's like, do you want Polynesian or Chick-fil-A sauce?
Yeah, but
that's
we're
not even
real
a
limited
question.
on sauce. Yeah.
You want both, but you can't have both. Here we go.
Yeah.
So, in leadership, what's more important, being or doing? Also, you can phone a friend, especially if it's a famous celebrity.
Being, yeah. Being, that's interesting. Being, maybe can you define, like, what does that mean? Like being,
Yeah, being, think about presence. Being is about togetherness. Deals with relationship, deals with being on the journey of the work, being in the process, whereas doing is more about tasks, more about the work itself.
yeah, totally. If I had to choose one, I would say doing. I think so many people talk about ideas. I think my heart wants to say being, but my head just knows that nothing comes without action. And I think
Mm.
action leads actually to being, into a greater understanding of presence and all those things. So thank you for clarifying, because it helped me say, yeah, it may sound, I hope it doesn't sound too, what's the word? Not trite or shallow, but it's, to me, that's just what I've found is the truth. You have to move, or a good line I like from Rich Roll, who's another great podcast I listen to, is he says, mood follows action,
Mm.
which I think
That's good.
is a great line. Go
Mhm.
for a 3, 5, 10 mile run and tell me that being doesn't come in the aftermath of movement.
Mm.
That's really good. In fact, one of the books that Taylor and I, Taylor actually recommended this book to me, which is shocking because usually all of Taylor's recommendations are bad, but this one happened to be good for once, and it's the book Spark. And in that book, the author talks about one of the best things that we can do as leaders, people in general, is when we're stuck mentally and emotionally, we just go for a walk, go for a jog. Um, if we want to have a fully engaged mind, we need to have a fully engaged body. And so
Yes.
we always look for opportunities to encourage listeners and leaders. One of the most important things you can do when you're stuck as a leader is go for a walk or take a nap. And if we would just leverage those two tools that we have that cost us nothing more often, we would find that we're thriving as leaders and as people. So I
Yeah.
love that you chose doing there. Let's talk about this one: relationships or results. Relationships or results. What's more important?
Yeah, that one's easy to me in relationships. You know, my dad growing up, he would drop this line of everyone communicates, few connect. And I love
Mm.
that line. When I got to college, I was walking around our library and I was looking through these books, and I found this book, and it said, Everyone communicates, few connect," by John Maxwell. And I remember thinking, Pops, you you snake.
You
You
didn't tell me
the
that
old
was
bag of
John
Maxwell.
Maxwell.
Yeah. No, it's kind of like Ricky Bobby. It's like, man, I lived my whole life on that.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Like,
right.
Ricky, I was high when I said
You,
that.
you can be second, you can be third.
Yeah, yeah, but no, it's so true. It's life is
Such a
relationships and
good piece
results.
of cinema.
Yeah, results
Mm,
come in the aftermath. And
mm,
Okay, love it. Let's go development or delivery. Development is about, think R&D. It's about working on quality, working on uh, product market fit. It's about dialing things in. Delivery is about, shipping the product. MVP, the enemy of good is great. The enemy of done is perfect. It's all about, you know, fulfillment.
yeah,
Development is about the perfection side of it. So what would you pick between the two of those?
totally. I actually see this one similar to being versus doing, and so I would say delivery, and just understanding that delivery in the early days of anything is not going to be perfect, but it's from delivery that then you get to. You said, is it discovery?
Development or delivery?
Yeah, it's yeah, through delivery you get to development, and it doesn't mean you like with what you have. Yeah, call it MVP, whatever. Make the delivery as best as you can with what you have in the moment. It's kind of like I have a friend and mentor of the Streamline. Actually, it's a Streamline author. He goes, guys, if you can just be 40%, be 100% at 40%. And I feel like that's been kind of our journey over the last 2+ years. And I don't think we're 40% now. Hopefully we've gotten better, where it's 50 or 60. But even if you can just give 60%, give 100% at 60%, I think to me kind of encapsulates that question of delivery.
And then we'll do one more that's similar along these lines: culture or productivity. Culture or productivity. I think oftentimes I find when I'm working with my pattern talent clients, they want to kind of trade. Either we have to be highly productive, or we have to have a really, really strong culture and we have to sacrifice one for the other. What would you say if you had the option to choose between the two of those?
Yeah, I would say culture, hands down. I think culture is the foundation, of any organization. And even if you can get by with the ladder for so long of productivity, right? Eventually, there are going to be cracks in the foundation. It's kind of like all truth comes out in the end type deal from a culture perspective. It may not catch up to you in the next 3 to 5 years, but give it long enough, and the cracks of culture, I think, will eventually reveal themselves.
mm.
Yeah, I'm big culture guy right here. I think just in terms of what I know or understand to be true. I remember even kind of being frustrated after I graduated college, and you're filling out your resume or you're sending it to these different companies to apply for a job or whatever. I just remember thinking that of like, man, if I could just show, how do you show that on a piece of paper? It's like, I like to smile. I like to, create kind of that environment. It's hard to do, which again kind of speaks to the relationship component, even in and through, yeah, whether you're trying to get a new job or you're trying to grow a business. It's like that again goes back to that middle question of why relationships matter so much. I think breeds into the culture question of establishing that as a foundation of your organization or whatever, yeah, group you're a part of.
That's
Love
great.
it,
I'll
man.
let you off the hook. Well, great job with rapid fire there.
You did well, sir. You you
I
made
was
it through
worried
the
about
fire.
that. that first one we kind of, it was turning into a slow burn and not the rapid fire. So the last two, I'm glad we picked it up a little.
Speedy
Yeah.
Gonzalez by the end. No, that's perfect, man. That's perfect. So, well, to keep you on your toes a little bit with the rapid fire, kind of as we're wrapping up here today, and thank you so much, man, for taking the time. Couple last questions, kind of hammering in. Just want to hear a little bit more about kind of Streamline, your authors, all those good things. So, are there any like patterns in the industry that are emerging with the authors that you see that as they publish, like anything that's coming to the surface at the moment?
Yeah, like in and through their process, or kind of after they publish, would you say?
I would say probably a little bit of both. Let's do in and through the process. Let's just help them with the process because I'm a big process guy. So what are some patterns that are emerging in the process?
Totally. So we have two phases in our process. We have the writing phase and the publishing phase. And with the writing phase, there for sure are patterns. Some of them I've named already. It's people dive in, they're excited. We spend a lot of time on the front end working through outline, because that again is taking years of experience.
Hmm.
And I will refer to that. It's analogous to sifting through the sand to find the gold and identifying what's the gold, in this first or second book that I'm writing, and identifying that piece. It's kind of taking that excitement on the front end and learning how to sustain that over an extended period of time. So our process is 6 to 8 months. And inevitably, you will hit a point a few months in where you're going, man, is this good? Is it what I want it to be? And that's,
Yeah.
again, a huge part of having a team of experts in quality control to say, yes, like this is a good book. You are communicating this message clearly. And then, it's right. It's when they get into the red zone, man, or there's a great story of, I think her name is Florence Chadwick. She's a gal who swam from like Catalina Island to the coast of California. Or uh,
Just a little swim. Yeah.
yeah, she gets a mile off the coast,
The
and
story.
you can Google this and read this story. She gets a mile away from the coast, but it got too foggy, right? And so she throws in the towel. She hops on the boat.
Mm.
Fog clears up. They swim to land. She was a mile away, type stuff. There's a lot of that with our authors of, hey, you're so close. It's like,
Yeah.
don't give up. We've done too much good work now. I would say for sure is a theme. And yeah, helping people that kind of final mile is a big one, because then what they experience once it's done is a book that they're proud of in the end, is something really, that is Resistance. If you guys are familiar with The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, that
Yeah.
capital
Great
R.
book.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
love it.
it's amazing. We will share that with a lot of our authors on the front end of the journey, because we know resistance is bound to come up.
Mm.
Some of those ways I just named, but then it's elsewise. It's different things in life that try to push you and pull you away from the creative work that
Yeah.
you were born to do.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. I love that. So it sounds like, hey, we've got resistance kind of a few months in, right? Like once the initial excitement wears off, and then again when we're just trying to punch it into the end zone. Brad has no idea what an end zone is because he's never watched sports in his life, but that's called a touchdown. If you get in there, Brad, it's where you make it. But it's
I
kind
love
of
baseball.
that seems like it's great to where your team comes in, right? Because I mean, there's that old African proverb, like alone we can go fast, but together we can go far. Like people that have been there, done it, and you guys can help them, whoever they are, get across the finish line. Like we kind of just need that. It's just so hard to do on our own. So that's great, man. So anybody listening who's thinking or thought of or in the process of, writing, remember that resistance will come, and we need a team to kind of help us push through those spots. So do you have either kind of like a favorite book that you have published, and is there anything that you are like most excited about right now with what you guys are doing or putting out there? So
Yeah, great question. On the favorite book, man, that's a tough one, especially if any authors listen to. It's like, oh, Will's about to say
sure.
about.
Yeah. Hey, you didn't
Yeah,
say me.
no, I'd say a couple. One, because it maybe a little close to home. Brad, thinking Atlanta connection, is a friend named Dale Alexander. Dale, the reason I think this one is fun: one, he was one of our first authors.
Yeah.
Two, he's the guy at the top of our website. So if you went to, it's writemybooks.com is what we have for Streamline. And Dale's there. He's opening his first box of books. Dale owned his own business for years. He was in employee benefits, and he has his own slate of, his giant book of schools that he would work with in and around the Southeast. And um, Dale's passion was giving a talk to middle and high school students about financial literacy. And so Dale had been giving this talk that he called the talk about money for years before he realized, kind of through our help with Streamline, he could take that talk and put it in book form.
Mm.
So Dale, through his own connections, namely alongside the Georgia State Board of Education, they agreed to purchase 120,000 of Dale's books to give to graduating high school seniors this past spring of 2023. And that moment, was fairly surreal for Alex and I, just going, oh man, this idea that we had that, again, kind of started with author one and Colin, and eventually led to, Dale being able to take this book as a resource. And that's something that Alex and I could have done. That was Dale and his connections and leveraging that. But seeing that was like, that's it, is empowering Dale to empower others is what we're after. Another recent one I would say is close to home here in Kansas City. Corey Shear is an individual who wrote his book called Closing the Trust Gap. And he's been super active on LinkedIn and promoting it. It's been so fun. I think he one day would be an awesome guest on the show. Corey's consultancy is called Trust Centric. And that's his whole deal, is coming alongside organizations and helping them infuse trust into the fabric of their culture. Corey's developmental editor on that project, I won't name her, but as part of her backstory, she had just come out of a very toxic business culture setting where trust was like a fundamental element of what had been broken in her relationship with her employer. And as a team, we knew that. And that's what happens with our authors. We create an author profile. Here's Corey Shear. Here's the book he wants to write. We send it out to a list of our trusted and vetted writers and editors, and we will get a handful of responses that'll say, I want to write alongside Corey. Here's why. And so we picked this gal because we knew what she had been coming from, and that tandem and what they created in closing the trust gap is just gold. And Corey will say it because we know our Streamline process largely hinges on that working relationship between author and writer, whether their writer is their developmental editor or their ghostwriter. And Corey knows she knocked it out of the park on a fundamental, working level. But beneath the surface, there was something so much deeper at play, which was kind of this like redemption story for her that she got to be a part of, which was to help train and help enlighten hundreds, thousands, I'm sure when it's all said and done, on what it means to operate out of trust when she was just coming from this broken system and fractured relationships as a result. Was so cool that she got to be a part of that project. It was a really fun one. And then another author who I'm super excited about, who's upcoming in 2024, her name is Leslie Wyrich. And Leslie's son, a number of years ago, he was a collegiate football player, just a stud, awesome young individual. He actually committed suicide. And we are helping Leslie write, edit, and publish her book called The Gift of Grief. So The Gifts of Grief. And it's just her experience in the aftermath of losing her son, and how she took that experience. And as as a parent, you can't imagine unless you've gone through it. And the people that she is going to impact, I know, through that book as a tool, I can't even imagine. Again, guys, it's things like that. I can't promise you Leslie's going to sell thousands of copies, but because I know who she is, she's going to do something better than sell thousands of copies. She's literally going to change lives with that book, and we've gotten to help her bound that up in a shareable form.
Man, I love that, man. That's so powerful, and just a bunch of different stories and peoples that you'll all have impacted. And what is even neat, and you probably don't even realize as you're talking about it, but like all of your highlights are about people that you've come alongside, and they're the heroes, right, in each of those stories, and getting to share their stories, which is was your kind of definition of leadership, is kind of the humility about being about other people. So I super appreciate you. I'm sure we could keep going on. You got, plenty of other books that are coming out and have come out that we could talk about all day. But I just really appreciate you sharing those. So, Brad, anything else we need to touch on here as we're kind of wrapping up? I know, Will, we super grateful for you coming on today. Anything else, Brad?
Well, I just want our listeners to know how to find you online if they want to learn more about who you are, what you're doing at Streamline. I've enjoyed following you on LinkedIn, obviously, so I would point people there. But where else would you point people?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking. I mentioned Streamline. Our website is writemybooks.com. Whether it's you or someone you know, obviously we would love to talk, in regard to helping bring one's book to life. Me personally, yeah, LinkedIn's fun. Also, I think maybe one that doesn't get talked about enough is Strava, maybe just for accountability. Go follow me. And if you haven't seen enough activity in a few weeks, yeah, maybe shoot me an email and say, what's going on, Willie? Get out there and move. I think Strava is great. Like that over the last couple of years and I do as of the last few weeks, I do need to get back on that app, but I love Strava. Coincidentally, I didn't mention this at the beginning. Kind of the book that got this whole Streamline journey going is I did it for myself. So I wrote and published my first book called Gouge, and it's on Amazon. And so, yeah, sometimes if I don't think about it, I'll kind of gloss over, but it is part of the story in that Alex saw me share Gouge on LinkedIn one day in the fall of 2020. That's how he reached out to me and said, Will, you wrote this book. I read it. You're a good writer. You should help other people do this. And I told Alex, I said, that's actually kind of why I wrote it. It was largely a means to an end. It was, if I'm going to help people do this writing, editing, publishing thing, I want to know it myself. So I did it. So you can go find my book Gouge on Amazon, which is fun. Part of the reason I bring it up is because then it became, well, what would I write about? If I wrote this little book, and the kind of the impetus of the book was I had deleted all my social media. Up until that year, I would tell some people, it was the closest I had felt to the gouge your eye out verse in scripture where Jesus talks about, I'd go back and find that's Matthew 5:29, but it's true. It started with Instagram. Then I was like Twitter, Facebook. I talk about kind of my reason for deleting those in the book itself. But yeah, it is also partly in turn of your question of like, I'm not on too much social, but yeah, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn as a platform. And then, yeah, or you could put email. Would love to get in touch with anyone who might be interested in connecting.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun, man. Thank you for your time.
So good.
Yeah, thank you guys. I agree, Taylor. We could probably keep going, but thank you for the time and can't wait to just watch the Daily Leader just grow in the months and years ahead as you guys are faithful with it. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be blessed by it. So thank you guys for venturing on with it.
Yeah. Oh man, no, it's our joy and our pleasure, and of course you can find all of that information on Will down in our show notes today. So, Will, again, thanks for the time. You have gifted us with a ton of nuggets of wisdom on leadership and your life. We're just super grateful. We hope that everybody tunes back in next week for another episode of the Daily Leader.